Mark Helwig. Tom Duffy is excused. Marshall Savitsky. Brian Bissonette. Chuck Van Etten. Jeff Haney. John Wigheimer. Ron Kinsley.
Here.
Ron Buckholz. John Sorowski. You have a quorum.
Thank you. Next item is pledge allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Number 4, certification compliance open meeting laws.
This meeting has been noticed to the public and news media as required by section 19.84 of the Wisconsin statutes.
Thank you. Number 5 is the meeting agenda. The agenda is set. Number 6, public comment. Anybody wishing to speak to the board, we ask you to state your name, address. We try to ask you to stay within 3 minutes to be respectful to all that want to speak. Mr. Ben Kurtzwell.
Benjamin Kurtzwell, 16040W West Lane, Hayward, Wisconsin. I'm also here on behalf of the town of Hayward as their chairman. I was hoping to speak when this issue came up on the agenda, but I guess this is the best way to do it. The rezone coming up for Medical Services, Inc. into industrial. The town of Hayward initially approved this at the Planning Commission level and the town board level in May. And it's already passed the zoning committee in May also. The town of Hayward then has done some more homework and review, and last week had a special meeting to vote on reconsidering our approval to Industrial 1, and that vote was unanimous to reconsider that. I could go into a lot more other stuff here, but from what I understand, this is about a sign, a 4-foot by 5-foot sign that was requested by Essentia Health. And the town of Hayward at this point would like the county board to know that the town of Hayward is not in favor of the rezone for 67 plus acres into Industrial 1. We believe there are better routes to go about the sign, and I will take full responsibility as the chair for the town of Hayward. I got appointed in May 1st, and we should have slowed it down at the town level in May, and for that I will take full responsibility. So we are in this unique situation where it has been approved at the town level, then approved at the zoning committee level, and now been, I guess, disproved or reconsidered at the town of Hayward level. So it is now on the table for the county board tonight to decide on this. Again, the town of Hayward is asking that you please deny this rezone. I'm sure, I think that our opinion is that may be the quickest route to be able to get Essentia Health, the sign done the proper way. Again, the feeling of the town is there is no issue with actually getting a sign 4 feet by 5 feet, but to rezone the whole 67 acres is not our view of it. And also, after further review, does not comply with our comprehensive plan, which is something that the Planning Commission and the town board, we dropped the ball on back in May. So again, that's on us. I guess that's pretty much it. The industrial is not compatible with our comp plan. We really have no issue with them getting a sign overall, just not in this way of rezoning this amount of land industrial. And that's what we hope the county board takes into consideration tonight and would vote to deny this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak to the board?
Brenda Detloff would, but I don't know how to raise my hand. I'm zooming.
Go ahead.
Brenda Detloff, 15838W Cadillac Road. I'm also on the town of Hayward Board of Supervisors, and I was also part of this reconsideration of the action that we took on our May 14th meeting. But I'd also like to quote some statutes that are in the Wisconsin statutes that gives us the power to do such things. And I will reiterate what Ben said. We were all new. The Planning Commission was new. There was many new members on the board, and we were ignorant of some of these things, and we've looked into it further. So under statute 60.23 par 5, there's actually 3 powers that we are given, and one is 62.23 city planning. We have the ability to plan and create a comprehensive plan, which we do have. We also are beholding to the public protection statute, which is 59.54. That's also under, miscellaneous. And also rural planning. And again, that's under miscellaneous powers, rural planning in the statute says 27.019. And that again is under our miscellaneous powers.
Brenda, your last
Yes.
30 seconds we couldn't hear.
Okay, please reconsider this and do not vote in favor of this. We would like to relook at this and have a different means to go about. Our assessor even said that commercial one is more suiting to this. Industrial one does not fit. Essentia Health will be taxed as a commercial one, and this facility, Tamarack Health under Medical Services, Inc., is very similar to Essentia Health. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you have someone else then? That was the one? Okay. And there's nobody else out there raise their hands, Alex? Yes. Yes.
Hi, Andrea Whitwer from Town of Hayward Board of Supervisors, 10370N Sawmill Road here in Hayward. And I would like to add my voice to opposing this particular rezone. I did some research also and found I found zero after about 2 or 3 hours of research, hospitals that are in actually an industrial zone. The majority of any information I found was either commercial or residential districts. I appreciate the hard work that our zoning office has done trying to help the hospital with their rezone. And absolutely no one on our board is opposed to anything to do with the hospital at all. It's just a matter of it does not fit into our comprehensive plan. And we do not feel that we should go back and have to reconvene a board and try to rewrite our comprehensive plan. It's an extremely long and difficult process. And so we would prefer that you consider a variance or something for the sign itself. I really appreciate you talking about that tonight. And we'll move forward with this. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Number 7, consider approval of the minutes of the previous meeting, which was May 16th.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chairman. I'll make that motion.
Motion by Mr. Buckles, second by Ms. Hessel to approve as presented. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Number 8, appointments. You want to handle them?
Okay, we'll start off with letters A and B. We have 2 terms on the Board of Appeals that are up, are expiring, and we have put forward renewing both of their appointments to the Board of Appeals for Steve Kelsey and Dee Dobalas. And below there you can see their background and the times they've served thus far on the Board of Adjustment. So with their experience and training for this, felt it appropriate to put their names forward for reappointment.
Wishes of the board.
Make a motion to approve the Board of Appeals for Steve Kelsey and Dee.
Second that motion.
Motion by Ms. Hessel, second by Mr. Helwig to approve Steve Kelsey and Dolores Douglas. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Letter C.
Letter C, due essentially to work commitments for Mr. Savitsky. He asked to be relieved of the appointment to the zoning committee as a full board, committee member. So we're putting forth a switch to make Mr. Savitsky the alternate and Steve Kariainen, who was the alternate, full committee member for the zoning committee.
I'll make a motion to approve that switch.
I'll second that.
Motion by Mr. Rigenheimer, second by Ms. Wilson to approve the change in Mr. Savinsky and Ms. There, carry in. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Letter D, outside committee appointment adjustments.
Somewhat in the same vein of work commitments as well as respecting the travel time some of these outside committee appointments take. Are putting forth some juggling of prior appointments. So for the Senior Resource Center, we are putting forth Marshall Savitsky to replace Ron Buckholz. On Indian Community Action Agency, Steve Karianen would replace Ron Buckholz. And then Ron Buckholz will replace Steve Karianen on the Northern Waters Library Service Board.
Mr. Maruta.
Oh, and NORTAC is the North Trail Advisory Committee, Northern Wisconsin Trail Advisory Committee. We have a county board appointment to that as well as a citizen appointment. And Mr. Marotek has served on there for the past 3 years, and we're putting forth him to be reappointed to that committee.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the appointments and adjustments of the outside appointment committees.
Motion by Mr. Buckles,
Second.
second by Ms. Hessel to approve the changes. Any discussion?
You have listed the Tourist Rooming House Ad Hoc Committee. Will that remain the same members?
That'll be next week.
Letter E.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yep.
All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Letter E, Tourist Rooming House Ad Hoc Committee.
Alex, are you able to put this one up on the screen since it was just uploaded today?
Maybe go over it a little bit.
Yeah, so Tourist Rooming House Committee was an ad hoc committee appointed about a year ago by the board chairman and the county board, or the creation of the committee and the appointments were done about a year ago. So the ad hoc committee has been working on the draft ordinance. That went to the Health and Human Services Board, who held a public hearing last week for the draft ordinance. After the hearing and some discussion, the decision of the board was to send it back to the ad hoc committee for additional work to bring back. And so with that, we realized we might need to do a little work to make sure we still have a ad hoc committee, because we did have a resignation. We have a board member who's no longer on the county board. So I went through and verified with the prior members who was able to continue on for an indefinite term on the ad hoc committee. So Chris Rusk was the board member I speak of that is no longer on the county board, so we needed to fill that spot. Matt Dale had resigned, and Chris Vaselli and Gary Nathan indicated they could no longer continue. So we want to appoint 4 new members. Marshall Savitsky would be the board member. Jim Tiffany, John Volmers, and CJ Damaski would fill the vacancies. John Volmers is a tourist rooming house owner in Sawyer County. CJ Damaski is a realtor and tourist rooming house manager, as is Jim Tiffany. So we think they bring good background to that committee.
Ms. Hessel.
I'll make a motion to approve the ad hoc committee.
I'll
second that.
There it is. Motion by Ms. Hessel, second by Ms. Wilson to approve the change with the ad hoc committee. Any discussion on changes? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Number 9, zoning committee report. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Buckles.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The zoning committee will hold its monthly public hearing tomorrow at 8:30. At last month's meeting, the committee heard and approved 1 conditional use permit for a new gravel pit. The committee also approved and conditionally approved a preliminary subdivision plat. The committee also heard 1 rezone case which will be discussed as the next agenda item, as well as a potential ordinance amendment change. The zoning department remains extremely busy with permits exceeding those over the last several years. There are only 3 current staff members for the department, with 2 new rehires positions starting within the next few weeks. This has resulted in permit issuance delays, temporary closures, of the department window and ability to perform some on-site inspections. And I just want to throw this out there to the board. The zoning committee, or the zoning department went from 8 people down to 5, and they're overly worked. And I believe somewhere, somehow, this committee, or this board, county board chair, and the zoning, or the administrator, Andy Alvarado, should take a look at this. We want to keep everybody that's in that zoning department now. We don't want to lose any more. With no other questions, I will turn it over to Jay to present the action items for the rezone and ordinance amendment change.
Mr. Kowalski.
Thank you. Our first one here this evening is rezone number 24-007. This is for Medical Service Inc. It's in the town of Hayward. Legal description is the northwest one half of the southwest and the north one half of section 15, township 41 north, range 9 west. It is 389 total acres zoned to agricultural 1 and forestry 1. The purpose of the rezone request is to rezone the entire portion of agricultural zone property, which is 67.6 acres, from agricultural 1 to industrial 1. This was a very interesting type of rezone request. Ultimately, to read, verbatim off my staff report, but Medical Services Inc. initially proposed that they wanted to have additional signage on Highway 77, not only to solidify the Hayward Hospital portion of that facility, but also the Essentia Health, now to be called Tamarack Services. So we started brainstorming as to, well, how can we allow for that additional signage? Signage right now within the current zoning ordinance is broken down per zone district. Certain zone districts allow for larger signs and additional signs, while an agricultural zone district doesn't allow for those larger types of signs. So that's where we started brainstorming. Should we go the route of a variance in order to get additional signage, or should we look at a rezone to a commercial or an industrial zone district to allow for additional signage? Since the Hayward Hospital is already, doing emergency service facility work, that was listed as a permitted use within the industrial zone district. It was my recommendation that, well, hey, if we can get the hospital into a permitted zone district, which it's really not as an agricultural, and we can allow for additional signage, we kind of kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Subsequently, at the town level, when they ended up wanting to do their reconsideration of their motion, and in lieu of kind of them looking at their comprehensive plan and stating that, industrial zone district kind of goes against it, we kind of have to go back to the drawing board a little bit on that. Because if this board is to ratify or approve the rezone, I would think that the town of Hayward would end up filing a petition or a resolution of denial, which would thus then render your decision void anyways. So in order to further complicate this moving ball of wax that's kind of snowballed into something else, it ultimately would be my recommendation that this county board would remand the decision back to zoning committee for further reconsideration in lieu of the town's reconsideration of their motion. That way we can iron out these other issues through the public hearing process and not at the county board level. I can further go in through my other elements of the staff report, but I guess I'll certainly ask or answer any additional questions you may have.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to make the motion to have this rezone number 24-007 referred back to the zoning committee for further review.
I'll second that motion.
So we have a motion by Mr. Buckles, second by Mr. Helwig to send it back to zoning. Discussion.
I know when this come before the zoning committee, and Jay's already said this, the zoning committee usually bases their decisions off what the town and the info gives them. But what we're hearing with the new town board and the new town chair, this stuff can easily get overlooked. So I think this would be the best solution, is to send it back to the zoning committee.
And I'll just add that, at that public hearing process for the zoning committee, it could be zoning committee's determination that they would remand it back to the town. And the town can look at potentially, changing the acreages or changing the zone district, or even to the extent the applicant could look at withdrawing the application and then proceeding with the variance for the sign. So those are things, again, we want to iron out back at a public hearing process at the zoning committee level. Correct procedures.
Question, is it 2 signs? Because they're 2 separate entities, Tamarack and
Yeah, as part of
Essentia?
the request, they'd be looking at an additional sign. They have one there right now that solidifies the Hayward Hospital as well as where the emergency service facility would be located, the ER. But they don't have one specifically for the clinic portion for what would now be called Tamarack Health. Tamarack and Essentia, okay. So we might see multiple variances for multiple signs.
Any other discussion? We have a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Letter C, zoning ordinance amendment.
Yeah, this was a zoning ordinance amendment that was initially, petitioned to me to look into for the town of Bass Lake to potentially remove language within our section 4.26 of the Sawyer County zoning ordinance, which is for storage shed exemptions. 2 years ago, we crafted out a piece of ordinance language that would allow for up to a 144 square foot storage shed on vacant land. Sawyer County has historically had a longstanding practice that we didn't want to have accessory structures or just sheds or just garages on vacant land. So we crafted out at least, a small storage area, which is usually in conjunction with campers. Campers have a grill or a lawnmower or a weed whipper. And a lot of times people were having to throw those under tarps or try to throw them under the camper when they would go away for the weekend. So it only made sense that, okay, we'll allow a small shed for that kind of storage stuff. We don't want you sleeping in it. We don't want plumbing in it, but something that you can keep, stuff dry and not to the size of a big garage. It's just a small storage shed. Well, one of those aspects that was put into that language was that it would not be allowed in platted subdivisions. There was, again, the town of Bass Lake, be it the Northwoods Beach subdivision area is our largest subdivision. So they kind of proposed to me, how can we potentially eliminate that language? They specifically wanted it in lieu when it was in conjunction with camping, but that also is kind of hard because not all storage sheds are involved in camping. Some might just be for having out on their vacant hunting land and they have no intentions of actually camping. But ultimately this went out for zoning committee discussion. Went out to the town boards. The towns ended up coming back as a vote of 8 for denial, 7 for approval. At the Sawyer County Zoning Committee level, it was then also recommended for denial. This is still at the county board level for your consideration. But you look at the town's decisions on it and the zoning committee's decisions on it, both of those were in essence denials. And again, we'll answer any questions that you may have on that.
What's the wishes of the board?
I would make a motion to deny the zoning ordinance amendment for storage shed and platted subdivisions.
I'll second that.
Motion by Mr. Hellwig, second by Ms. Wilson to approve the denial. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Kowalski.
Thanks, Mr.
Thank you.
Letter
10, Public Works Committee, Mr. Hellwig.
Good evening. Public Works convened their meeting on June 12th at 6:30. I'll give you some highlights of our meeting. On the maintenance, along with the routine building and equipment maintenance, the following maintenance projects are in process or were completed in May. Approximately 7,000 feet of electrical and low voltage wire has been run through the courthouse ahead of the installation of the door access car readers that are scheduled to be installed in June. Staff has responded to and completed 44 service requests, 47 reactive work orders, and 6 presented work orders in the past 30 days. And the ambulance building, the roofing project at the Hayward Ambulance Station has been completed. The new ambulance, which was ordered in 2023, has been delivered. The Sawyer County Airport report, traffic's been steadily increased as usual. Memorial Day was relatively busy because of the nice flying weather. Business class aircraft once again have been descending on our small airport. Community has recently attracted several families to purchase lake homes in the area. One of these families has a King Air 350 that plans to begin weekly flights. They live approximately 650 miles away. That's a pretty good size, very big airplane, actually. The EAA is hosting a Young Eagles free flights for kids ages 7 to 17 at the airport on June 22nd. A full region-wide schedule can be found on the EAA Chapter 631 website. The Highway Department has finished brushing, will resume in July this summer. Master plan is still ongoing, and consultants at Kaufman are working on alternative designs, considering the public comments made at our spring public involvement meeting. We'll have another meeting in September or October timeframe. There's a Civil Air Patrol fundraiser, the fly-in open house for July 17th. Several county employees have come forward to help volunteer for the event. The FBO fuel sales have been slightly higher for this year. The Highway Department has had crews have completed reclaiming shoulders on the state highways along with a few county roads. The mastic work has been completed on State Highway 48 from State 40 to Copley Road. The scrub seal is scheduled for August 5th. County C Bridge is, excuse me, Lunda was awarded the project. Looks like it'll be an August, September project. Culvert replacement on County D and C is in process. This will allow time for compact. They have 2 culverts to replace on the County Road E by Indian Lake and Road that are failing. This will consist of closure of County E. That will be closed about 3 days. All the ATV signs that have the roads we've opened up, all those signs are out now, so they can be used. We also approved a permit for an access driveway on Highway B, south side of Highway 2 miles west of Sheptick Lane. That ends my report.
Good job. Any questions for Mr. Helwig? Hearing none, we'll move on. Letter B, control access policy.
Technically doesn't need approval by the board. The Public Works Committee has control of the control access.
Moving on, number 11. Public safety report, Mr. Buckles.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Public Safety Committee met on June 6th. Circuit Court Judge's report. Judge Eisher presented a verbal report. Recovery Court is going with 6 participants and a potential 6 more in various phases of the entry into the program. Clerk of Courts, revenue collected through the state debt collection and tax intercept was $19,729.78 for the period of 4/28/24 through 5/28/24 with $814.02. Mrs. Kelsey advised that the clerk is leaving and they are interviewing at this time for a replacement. Sheriff's Department report, Communications Center and Emergency Management report was given. They continue in hiring and training as well as applying for grant funds. Call volume has significantly increased with approximately 870 more calls than last year. The county will host an emergency planning course on October 2nd and 3rd. Registration available through trainingwisconsin.org. Patrol report, patrol volume calls also have increased. Primary and increased in traffic contacts. 20-year Deputy Craig Depew has tendered his retirement. The ending of the school year results in the closing of truancy calls and are included on non-traffic citation statistics. Jail report, total population is 50 with one having Huber work hours, and unemployment rate is 76. The inmate population numbers continue to slowly decline. The communications specialist report, Andy introduced members of the GenCom team to present a proposal. A written report was conducted. 6 radio sites was provided along with a copy of the county road proposal. And a secondary component of the proposal was recently introduced, whereas we've engaged with Bug Tussle, a company, to investigate putting in fiber network as part of the project. Mr. Pelletier has presented the proposal for 6-site system. A copy is attached to the packet. Proposed Syncast systems will allow all channel systems to communicate at once. Mobile coverage would be cover 100%. And the new proposal loses some coverage in the southeast, much more loss with the indoors. Next steps involve conversation for detailed design options between Bug Tussle and GenCom and the county and the tower stakeholders. Mr. Mitchell from Bug Tussle provided an overview on how their services could integrate with the county and partnership system. Some funding was presented, and the timeline for the whole project would take up to 1.5 years. Code enforcement, Mrs. Olson and Mr. Alvarado presented an amendment for the animal control, which is on the agenda. There was a motion by the public safety to approve. Search and rescue MOU between the county and Sawyer County Search and Rescue Team, Sawyer County Sheriff's Department. A motion was made by Mr. Helwig and approved for the county board, second by Mr. Surowski. A child report was given. Total support due was $857,738.78. Amount collected was $600,016.59. Emergency services. An offer from the Round Lake Ambulance building site. Mr. Alvarado presented it to request that the town of Round Lake has interested in establishing an ambulance garage in the town. The current ambulance there is staffed by volunteers only, and they would like to full-time presence. The cost is set up, full-time crew there would be approximately $750,000. Option to rotate the existing 3 crews could be considered because they're offering the land for that site. Criminal Justice Reporting Council, MOU, 3-year renewal between LCO and Sawyer County for criminal justice coordinating. Council Judge Isom advised that the Tribal Governing Board is working on the proposal to bring these amendments to the county. No action was taken on the current vision. That ends my report, Mr. Chairman.
Good job, Mr. Buckles. Any questions for Mr. Buckles? Hearing none, we'll go letter B, Code Enforcement Specialist, Resolution to Animal Control Amendment. Mr. Alvarado.
Thank you. So what you have in front of you is a resolution to approve amendment to the county code of ordinances to address some deficiencies we found in the animal control area. And it is also in the resolution is the establishment of permit fees for a number of items, including breeding facilities, kennel permits, pet shop permits, etc. So I'll just go through the amendments to the animal control ordinance itself. We added in under section 422, items J and K, which are essentially failure to renew fees or double permit fees. If somebody has a permit for a kennel or pet shop and they do not renew timely, this incorporates the penalties and violations for not doing so. Under section 4210, under restraint, we did not have adequate language for the control officer to deal with public nuisance animals. So this adds in language that allows the animal control officer to declare an animal a public nuisance and how they notify the owner. And then there's an appeal process for the owner to make through the Public Safety Committee if they do not agree with that determination. And then item 4 details how to determine what a nuisance animal is. Down further, under penalties, we establish the penalties for violations, which were not detailed within the ordinance. And then the tables at the end, it was really unclear as to what the actual ordinance, or excuse me, not the ordinance, but the forfeiture amounts were for violations of the ordinance. So to simplify things, we just adopted the clerk of courts forfeiture schedule. So you can see the forfeiture amount is on the left, and then after you roll up all the court fees, surcharges, et cetera, details the total amount of the forfeiture amount, which was what the animal control officer would put on the citation to the violator. So it's really just cleaning this up. Did not have a very clear ordinance that allowed the animal control officer to do the things we expect them to do. And then the permit fees, those are in the resolution. They coincide with section 422E. The permits required are all listed there, but no fees. By doing this, we'll put them in our schedule of fees document, and then we can update that annually rather than having to update the ordinance. Any questions?
Mr. Buckles?
I make a motion to approve the resolution on the animal control amendment.
I'll second it.
Motion by Mr. Buckles, second by Mr. Steve Carrion to approve. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Letter C, search and rescue MOU.
So I think everybody probably is aware that Sawyer County for years and years has operated a search and rescue team, which is an all volunteer organization. This really came up here a few months ago when Search and Rescue was going to do a demonstration for one of their community partners, and the community partner asked for a certificate of insurance, and we asked for that, and had some difficulty to produce one because there was not a very clear relationship between Search and Rescue and the county. Exactly, are they part of the county? Are they not part of the county? And if they are, under what authority are they here? So we drafted a memorandum of understanding between SAR, or Search and Rescue, and the Sheriff's Department. The Sheriff's Department is ultimately responsible for them. This puts the Sheriff and the Sheriff's Department in charge of verifying the training procedures of SAR, approving new members, making sure they have standard operating procedures in place. Without this agreement, they can only operate within the county at the direction of the sheriff. They do get called out to searches in other counties, and again, they only can do that with the approval of the sheriff. So what you see here is really just a formalization of everything that's essentially been happening, but in black and white, that everybody understands their roles and responsibilities and accountability. This is important to the insurance company under our county insurance in order to provide a liability coverage for them. So we verify that they are doing the correct training and operating appropriately, the sharing information. We share equipment. There is a small budget within the Sheriff's Department for search and rescue. So I think this just really cleans it up, and search and rescue representatives, as well as the sheriff and the insurance company, are all happy with the MOU as presented.
Mr. Howie?
I would like to make a motion to approve the memorandum of understanding between the Sawyer County Search and Rescue Team and the Sawyer County Sheriff's Department.
Thank you. Ms. Hessel?
I'll second that.
We have a motion by Mr. Hellwig, second by Ms. Hessel to approve. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Number 12, Land, Water, and Forestry Committee. Mr. John Sorowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Land, Water, and Forest Resources Committee met on June 12th at 8:30. Motion was to approve the previous meeting minutes from May 8th was made by Ms. Wilson, seconded by Mr. Carrion. All approved. A written report was provided detailing activity in the Office of the Register of Deeds. In events, Canba Kids 2024, Canba South Women's Weekend Clinic, and Chequamegon 100 events were presented by Mr. Wright. Insurance is on file. A motion was made by Ms. Wilson and approved by to approve all three events as presented. Second made by Mr. Carrianen, and the motion was carried. In Land Records and County Surveyor Department, a written report advised that the department has been busy completing certified survey maps, 11 of them in May. County forestry reports were provided by Mr. Peterson, and an overview of the department's functions and responsibilities was included. Forestry supports a good share of our county budget. Timber sale contracts are right now $4,898,729.55, which is on target for our budget. In the DNR forestry report, Mr. Fisher advised us that the wet spring has helped keep wildfires down. Mr. Fisher's duties were included in the report. In the zoning conservation department, good news that Sawyer County was approved for the municipal dam grant for Fish Trap Lake, targeting a replacement project in the fall of 2025. Staff has been helping landowners with shoreline erosion products. The meeting was adjourned, and the next meeting scheduled for July 8th at 8:30. That concludes my report. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Ralston. Any further questions? Thank you. Number 13, Health and Human Services Board, Ms. Wilson.
The Health and Human Services Board met on June 11th. We started our meeting with a public hearing on the tourist rooming house ordinance. We had 15 people speak to the issue, as well as the chairman of the committee, Ginny Chobek. The public health report was given by Julia, because Julie was on vacation. There was a drug take back of 185.5 pounds of medication. Measles is up in their report. 83% of those are unvaccinated. Influenza, COVID, and RSV is down. The tourist rooming house ordinance was denied 4-2. The LCO liaison, Mr. Trepanier, provided a program that they are instituting called LCO Falcon. And he presented the visuals. They're a beautiful display on fentanyl awareness that they will be taking to schools and workshops, and as well as anti-bullying. The Senior Resource Center advised that a cook had been hired, but then she quit, so we're still looking for a cook. Mr. Alvarado introduced documents for the ordinance and amendments authorizing county health officers to issue citations. The adult long-term care was introduced with an increase in referrals and walk-ins. There are 27 open investigations on emotional, physical, and neglect for financial exploitation. There's a learn at the library sessions in July and October, and they're the second Tuesdays of the month from 10 to 12. There's something called a brain checkup. Behavioral health, there are 47 people in long-term care, and they're reorganizing some of the areas to determine how to best handle crisis events. Child Protective Services, they have 44 open cases. They're at full capacity with 12 to 14 per caseworker. There was a second juvenile gun-related incident this week, and they're starting to work on kids as young as 10 years old. The economic support, there were 8,264 calls into the coalition in April, and because of the unwinding of the COVID financial and healthcare support. Approximately $280,000 in food share benefits were dispensed. The budget, they feel that they'll have a better line item on the budget in July once 6 months has gone by. And we will be bringing back to the committee updates from other meetings that we attend. That's my report.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Wilson? If not, we'll move on to letter B, citation authority resolution. Mr. Alvarado.
All right, what you have in front of you is another amendment to the county ordinances. Specific to the amendment, fairly straightforward actually. So it amends section 1, 2, 3 of the ordinances affected. These are the ordinances the county has that citations can be issued for. And it adds number 10, the Sawyer County Health and Sanitation Ordinance, which is chapter 14. Chapter 14 already exists in our book of ordinances. It's just not listed under the ordinances that citations can be issued for. And the section 124 adds item 4 that the county health officer or any employee of the county health and human services department that should be designated by the county health officer, is eligible to issue those citations. And just for reference, back in the resolution, the ability to issue citations and the citation authority is granted by the state statutes that are listed there, and the ability to enforce them. It's just that in our ordinances, we do not specify them. So this just takes out a wrinkle should somebody want to challenge a citation by the county health officer. It's clearly stated in our ordinances that they're able to enforce those ordinances and issue citations, and the health officer or the designee is able to do that. The other thing in the resolution, there are some blank lines that should have been filled in after the committee meeting, but those are all, the Health and Human Services Committee did vote to recommend approval, so all the blanks are to indicate approval by the Human Services Committee to come into this board.
What's the wishes of the board?
I'll make a motion to approve the citation authority resolution and ordinance amendment.
Motion by Ms. Wilson to approve. Mr. Buckles?
I'll second that motion.
Second by Mr. Buckles. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Wilson. Number 14, Finance Committee Chair Report. Mr. Righeimer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We met on June 13th, the Finance Committee. A written report was presented by the treasurer. The Finance Department went over several items with us. Sales tax distribution. We remain on track with tax revenue. We had a budget update, and we are at 42% of budget on expense side and 39% net of transfer to HHS. The capital improvement plan update was showing a total of $81,763 in expenses. The budget timeline and parameters were presented. A motion was made by new staffing requests are due by June 30th. Mr. Markren has entered a preliminary highway budget, and the same with HHS. He's attempting to get proposed grant amounts to enter into the budget process. Health insurance is budgeted with a 5% increase, and departments have been asked to present a thorough 5-year CIP so that we can effectively plan out long-term needs. There was an investment update. A written report was provided. Interest earned was $109,000 and $109,134. And we did purchase a CD of $3 million, which was previously approved. On the ambulance update, the average billed per month is down, as well as average collected. We are showing a loss in net income at this point. April dispatch calls were down from the previous month and from the average. Over the 12-month cycle, we're about the same as previous years. Mr. Alvarado discussed the bug tussle project. I won't go into detail on that. I think many committees have gone through that, and he may go through that again in his report. The NWCEP requested assistance due to financial difficulties. They are requesting $5,000 in their annual report. Ms. Alvarado advised that the entity is having meetings now to determine next move, so action is not yet needed on this item. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Righeimer? Hearing none, letter B, Kruger settlement. Mr. Alvarado.
Yes, if you've been on the board for any length of time, you've seen a number of these different settlement documents come through. There's been the distributor settlement and the retailer settlement. Places like Walgreens, CVS, Walmart have already settled. We believe, or we're being told that the Kroger settlement is probably the last settlement that's going to be reached in this list of companies related to the opioid production and sale. So this lengthy legal document just accepts the Kroger settlement and attaches it to the same agreements that were already adopted for the prior settlements. So the same language, the same distribution percentage, the same process of how the funds will be distributed through the National Settlement Agency. So we're just adopting this to accept the Kroger settlement. I can't give you an exact dollar amount of what our amount of allocated funds will be, just that it's gonna be in the neighborhood of $50,000. That's based on the $1.2 billion, which is a national settlement. Wisconsin will get their share of it, and then we get 0.00258% of that. So that'll come out, and then you gotta calculate in the attorney fees and the administration costs. So we just been told it's gonna be in the neighborhood of 50. So that puts our total amount of opioid dollars that we expect to be just over 700,000. And that's gonna be coming over a period of years. Each settlement has a different length of payment, or how many payments they're going to make. Some are just a few years, and some of the bigger ones are 18 years out. But as of today, we've received about 277,000. Last year, we budgeted about half of that for the fentanyl awareness campaign, and about 133,000 is still sitting in our opioid fund. So that 430,000 is still expected over a period of years. And we're still bound by the settlement terms that has what we call Exhibit E, which lists all the things you can use it for. All the settlement funds have to be applied to Exhibit E and the appropriate uses.
Wishes of the board. Mr. Buckles.
I make a motion to approve the resolution Kroger settlement.
I'll second the motion.
Motion by Mr. Buckles, second by Mr. Righeimer to approve the settlement. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Does that take care of number 2? Thank you.
Yep.
Number 15, Economic Development, UW Extension Report. Mr. Righeimer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We met on June 10th. The Hayward Lakes Visitors Bureau gave a report, and the marketing efforts, the report of marketing efforts was provided along with a list of upcoming PR dates. Ms. Beckman advised that the film tax incentive bill is being reintroduced, and the Department of Tourism would operate the bill if approved. The goal of this is to bring more movies to Wisconsin. The ATV and snowmobile coordinator trail map and trail guide were shared, and room tax revenue for first quarter was down about $10,000, but sales taxes were up. The Northwest Regional Planning Commission gave a report. Mr. Johnson discussed with us they are working with several lakes and lake associations to treat aquatic invasive species, and he made us aware that their annual meeting is June 26th. The Economic Development Corporation report, they are still working on the incubator house and continue discussions on housing. Libraries, both libraries gave written reports, and the motorized trail and non-motorized trail report. At the time, the new approved county routes had not been, routes were not approved to ride on until their signage is up, but I believe the signage is up now, so that's a little stale information. They are seeing an average of over 80 riders a day on the trails that have monitors. And then Mr. Duffy gave us a Berkey update. And there are over 6,000 skiers registered already for the Berkey, and comedian Charlie Behrens will be at the Lumberjack Games. Do not have specific dates over that weekend. There was a broadband update by Mr. Johnson talked from the NWRPC that there's a joint group application for BEAD funds of about $200,000. The Public Service Commission completed its first 30-day review of the underserved maps. The NWRPC will help coordinate information between the PSC and the counties to formulate resolutions for future applications for new funding and projects, choosing which provider to recommend for these projects. The applications are expected to come out this year with full build out in the 2028-29 years. And then, of course, we had a review of the bug tussle proposal, which I will skip at this point. Mr. Karianen provided an update of his attendance at the Northern Waters Library Board and Northwest Wisconsin CEP boards. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Righeimer? Hearing none, we'll move to 616 as a new item. It's for these outside committees to bring the board abreast of what's going on in different areas. I'll give you an example. The administrative committee meets with the veterans. The veterans, Gary Elliott is in charge. He comes up to the administrative committee and gives a report. This last month, he gave a report how well Memorial Day services went. He also always tells us how many phone calls and people he's seen over the month, which I think is very good. And he does a nice job. In case anybody doesn't know, the Veterans Department building has moved out on 63 where it used to be back here. Mr. Buckles, I understand we have a speaker for Nemacolin Transit.
Yes, we do, Mr. Chairman, and I'd like to introduce our new Nemacolin Transit Manager, Carrie Sabin, and she's got an update of what we got going on out at the transit.
Welcome.
Hi, thanks, Ron. So my board and I met today and they kind of asked me to come and present my report from our annual or our monthly meeting. So we currently have 32 employees. Some are full-time, some are part-time. Our primary funding source is we are funded by state and federal grants. The grants that we receive are based on our local support, which we receive from LCO and Sawyer County. The amount that we receive on the local level to operate is determined by what we receive in the grant funding, sorry. We also receive some funding from both IRIS and Inclusa for transporting their clients. We're currently working on 2 projects at the transit. We are upgrading our phone systems. So currently we have, our phone systems are about 22 years old. So we are entering a contract with Nervato for new IP phone systems, which will be really nice and efficient for us. So that contract will be a 5-year contract and my board approved that today. And it'll be about $100 less a month than our current carrier, which is CenturyTel. We are working on a new HR and payroll software. We currently do not have any HR and payroll software. So this will provide some efficiency and provide secure employee file retention and track training and license. It will also provide a much more efficient way of processing our payroll. We are currently in the hiring process for a new mobility manager. This position has been vacant for about 3 months, so I am very excited to hopefully be extending offers within the next week. Our ridership for May was 4,577. This was an increase of 267 riders from April, and it is the highest that it has been for May in the last 5 years, which we're really excited about. And then we have a staffing update. I have 2 full-time employees that are going to go out on FMLA in July, but we have the staffing to cover those.
Thank you. Any questions for her?
Any questions?
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you.
Anybody else that's on some of these subcommittees that wish to share with the board? It's going to be work in progress. Mr. Cariani.
Yes, I've attended a few outside committee meetings since our last board meeting. The first one was on May 18th, Northern Waters Library Service Board of Trustees. We talked about compliance issues at Iron River and Cable Libraries. Talked about the proposed ILS merger between Northern Waters and the Wisconsin Valley Library System. And the Board of Trustees also approved member county appropriation increase of 3%. On May 29th, Northwest Regional Planning Commission Broadband Committee had a Zoom meeting. They're going to work on compiling a list of regional internet service providers. They'll do outreach to the counties on need for formal endorsement resolutions from the counties. And they're also going to draft an outline of a regional plan for all the counties to work together on this. On June 11th, I had an orientation meeting with the SEP staff there, just reviewed the history and function of SEP, and I did leave a couple of little items in front of you. This one pager is just kind of a brief overview of all the services SEP provides, and the other rather large spreadsheet here is just kind of a scorecard, if you will, for how well SEP is doing in performing its functions compared to the rest of the state. And there's 11 districts that do the same services across the state. And SEP, the Northwest District, is the only one that exceeds the metrics, for all 18 categories. So they're doing a bang-up job, I guess is the bottom line. They're struggling financially, but they're doing a bang-up job. And you heard about the request for $5,000 because of the current shortfall, and there's nothing we can do about it now, but just wanted to leave you with that, so to give you a better understanding of, what we're looking at there. And on the 19th, yesterday rather, we had another board meeting and also a Workforce Investment Board Consortium meeting in Ashland. And at that meeting, we reviewed and approved the SEP board motions and recommendations from that May 15th meeting, which actually required WIB to provide a little more documentation in their billing back to SEP. It renewed the fiscal agent memorandum of understanding between SEP and WIB, and also went over the CLEO-WIB joint agreement and updated dispute resolution language. So that's kind of a thumbnail sketch of some of the stuff that's been happening. And next Monday, I will be attending the Indian Head Community Action Agency meeting in Ladysmith.
Thank you. Anybody else have anything they want to share? That's kind of work in progress. We'll try to get it so we can have a report from all committees.
I could share.
Yes, please.
Ron Kinsley and I went to the Sawyer County Housing Authority meeting on June 12th. The previous meeting, the month before, I was there for 40 minutes and was assigned to be a check signer. So much for the new guy on the block, huh? So I asked the board what they would like for me to share, and they said that they have 5 vacancies in Exelon. The other housing units are filled with a waiting list. Their biggest problem in the housing is a drug problem. If a person is evicted or leaves a housing, they're all tested for meth. If there's any meth residue or in the unit, it has to be completely renovated. And those last two renovations were $14,000 or $17,000 for the unit. And some of the people that are evicted or leave the units leave all of their possessions behind. And so they have to then get trucks and dispose of everything that's left behind. So those are their biggest issues besides the 5 openings that they have. But it's a excellent 1-hour meeting that's very well organized, and I've learned a lot so far. Thanks.
Thank you.
Chair, can I ask Kate?
Yes.
Okay, they're called Sawyer County Housing, but they're not actually Sawyer County. I mean, they're separate entities of ours, correct?
Yes.
Do you think that they would ever consider coming to our economic development meetings? Because we're always talking about housing issues, but we don't have their piece of knowledge to bring to our economic development when we're talking about housing shortages. Do you think that they would either give a report or want to come to a meeting?
We can certainly ask.
Yeah, we had her probably a year ago or more, come give a, kind of the same thing about the occupancy rates, and they were looking at potential building sites.
I recall that only because they asked us for funding, but that's where I just wanted to have that established relationship. Or if they're called Sawyer County Housing, like, we should have them involved in the county projects, I think.
That would be for economic?
Maybe not. I just
or the
was trying.
I don't know if that's an economic issue. It's more of a health issue.
Well, housing is an economic issue. We talk about
But
that.
drugs is their biggest issue.
It may be their biggest issue, but they have a lot of issues, and I think they should be there. When you can set up something for them to come speak, that would be great.
Yeah, even if it wasn't in person, but a written, just so we could all be on the same page for housing, I think.
Yes.
Do you want me to ask at the next meeting then, or Andy, do you want to ask?
I can talk to her.
Okay.
If you want her there quarterly or semi-annual, she's been accommodating in the past, even just for information on where things are at.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to 17, County Administrator's Report, Mr. Alvarado.
All right, just start with some personnel updates. We're getting closer to full staffing and dispatch in jail. Continually, it seems like the pool of ability to hire is improving, which is good. Other good news, just to highlight from CJCC, is our jail population is down right around the 50 mark, which is, over the last couple of years has really come down. We were up in the 90s in 2022, so that's a big relief for our jailers that have to manage those inmates. We are recruiting for 2 deputies. We had a retirement and a resignation. Ambulance, still difficulty with the paramedic position, which I'll mention a little bit later. It makes it tough for us to assess and improve our efficiency when kind of the key piece is just short. The availability is short. There's just not enough paramedics in the region. You're constantly sharing them with other services or stealing them. We do have a few people that we've sponsored, EMTs, to be in the paramedic program at Northwood, but they're still probably 6 months out from being available as paramedics. Highway Department did fill up all the seasonal positions, hired a social worker or a social service worker for kinship and foster care coordination. We did hire a deputy zoning administrator, or I should say we've offered. That person still has a start date. We also hired the administrative assistant for the zoning office, who starts next week. And then we've interviewed and offered for an open clerk of court deputy position. Grievance filed by the Sawyer County Deputy Sheriff's Association. Our briefs have been filed, written briefs, after the hearing last month. So we're just looking forward to a decision on that. Corporation Council, some land use items, some of that you heard about tonight. And then all these ordinances that we're working on, we have them involved. You'll probably be seeing more ordinances now that we've got the book of ordinances adopted. We're finding some shortfalls and things we need to clean up, like the animal control and the public health citation. The zoning ordinance amendment, the committee has paused that for the time being, and then the tourist rooming house has been sent back to the ad hoc committee for more work. Not a whole lot of updates for the airport. You've heard from Mr. Hellwig about the increased activity out there. Ambulance, yeah, we're still just trying to get more efficient at that. We were hoping to expand go to 2-person crews more consistently to have an extra ambulance to do transfers. That's still difficult with the shortage of paramedics, but we're reviewing those calls, and summer is the busy season, so there's a lot of shifting going on with staffing there. As Mr. Buckles shared, we did receive a written communication from the town of Round Lake of their offer of land at the town for the county to put up a third ambulance station, a full-time staff station. So we are going through and assessing that. That's going to be an interesting and probably difficult consideration. There's obviously the cost to build and then operate. You have the upfront cost to build and then your annual operating cost of a third station, staffing and getting enough staffing for it. And then even if the idea of if we were to have a third station, where would the ideal place be to locate it? But I was at the Town of Round Lake meeting last week, and there was definitely some fiery public comments about wanting the improvement in service in that area of the county. So I know they're serious about it. So we're looking at the options. Really would be a part of the budget consideration, whether it would be an additional crew or shifting a crew out to that area, and then how does that impact the total ambulance operation around the county. Not a whole lot of economic development, just I think you all received an email highlighting the increase in visitor spending in 2023. I think it was a 5.3% increase. Sarah County is now at $150 million of estimated tourism expenditures, so that's a big positive. I don't know that we're off to a great start with no snow in the winter and a lot of rain in the summer. It doesn't make for a outdoor recreation paradise when the weather doesn't cooperate, but I think it's noteworthy though that our sales tax numbers are up overall for the year, even if room taxes are down. So perhaps people spent more money locally and weren't traveling that are our residents. Broadband, I think just to fill in some blanks there, we did review the BEAD maps and the community anchor institutions, did not see any challenges there. Talking with our kind of what we consider our local providers, they didn't see much there to challenge either. Within the industry, they're talking about the BEAD applications coming out late third quarter or in the fourth quarter. I've had a conversation with a couple of them and what their plans are, so it's looking promising that they'll be going after those dollars. I did put a link up in the report if you want to see the Sarah County broadband profile. I encourage you to go there. It talks about and it's partly based off of the BEAD maps. It shows you all the broadband service locations, which what I would say is that's like a service that's like your house or a cabin or a place where somebody or a business, a place where somebody wants broadband or could have broadband. So they've identified just over 17,000 of these BSLs. Right now, there's still 9,000 some change that are what they consider underserved or unserved. But when you take into account all the funding and existing enforceable commitments, that's grants that have already been allocated by the PSC or the federal government to the providers. Once those projects are all in process now, once those are all completed, then we'll be down to just under 5,000 unserved or underserved locations. So that's most likely the locations that the BEAD money will target. So we hope to see that number come down. The BEAD meeting that they held last month, I think one thing that's maybe noteworthy is that it's pretty open discussion now that not everybody in every location is going to be able to get fiber or even a wired connection for high speed, that there are just some places that are too expensive to serve that way. So we expect during the BEAD process that they will be taking applications for wireless connections as well. And that's, we do live in a, area where some people choose to live on the back of a 40, and that might be the only solution they have is a wireless connection. LCO, we've had some communication regarding the ATV routes and then the CJCC agreement. I don't remember where we were with this last month, but at one point they were not going to renew the CJCC agreement with us, but they have reconsidered. We're expecting some language changes requested in that MOU. So once we get those, we'll run those through the committee and hopefully get that agreement back in place. CJCC, we're preparing the TAD grant for next year with Justice Point with a little bit of an expansion. We're at the diversion program is That's the pretrial work. They're overbooked right now, so there's a waiting list for those. Treatment court is full up as well. They've got, I believe, 10 people into the treatment court, which is the maximum amount. And then they've done the training for the deflection grant. So, I mean, things are happening there. I can't tie them directly to their jail population, but I think we're hearing positive things about the effects of the diversion program, especially on the court system. I mentioned the opioid dollars earlier that we budgeted and provided for the fentanyl awareness campaign, primarily with public health. They expect to have a report back in July or August on how those funds were used and where they're at, and then what the next steps are with the opioid, or the fentanyl and opioid campaigns. Covered the opioid settlement. 2024 budget or financials are being closed out. The auditors have been here the last couple of weeks. 25 budget is started. Direction from finance committee has been provided and admin, and we've sent out the work to the departments to start working on their 25 budgets, including capital projects and future plans, as well as potential staff requests. We already know, like Mr. Buckholz had mentioned, that we've got some sore spots in some departments or some critical areas that are gonna need some attention for staffing. I don't have a projection on how many. I have an idea of how many staff requests are gonna come in this year. We have not had much the last couple of years, which has been good, but there are definitely some pain points. So I don't have a projection of how many of those we can afford, but certainly not all of them that I anticipate coming in. So we've come up with a little better, more detailed process for departments to provide information and justification for positions, including any additional revenue that they might generate or grant dollars that could support positions. So we're digging into those already. Good news, sales tax and investment returns are where they need to be as our forestry sales. So we're hoping, we just don't anticipate any increases from where we were for the last, we think the increases in those areas are over, but we should be able to maintain those funding levels. Search and rescue, we've gone through that. Facilities, I think Mr. Helbig covered a lot of that. Doing some smaller projects within in the building. The automation of the door controls is ongoing. There's a fence being constructed outside of the Branch 2 court offices for security. We did some work in the clerk treasurer area, and then we'll be starting to work down. We've got approval from the court system. We had to get the district court, their approval to do some work in the clerk of court's office, relocate the secure window from the former registrar and probate office down to the DA's office. So we have all those approvals. So we're continuing to be moving ahead on that. We have a lengthy list for Buildings and Grounds Department, but we're very fortunate that they're able to do a lot of that work on their own. Public Safety Radio Network, I too am not going to go into the details on that because I think we've shared it all. Just that the ongoing work right now is that doing our due diligence on the companies involved to see if they're good partners, and then also looking at with the bug tussle option specifically. I think Mr. Buckholz outlined that it does leave some gaps in the southeast portion of the county compared to just the GenCom proposal. So we're trying to see if we can get an equivalent amount of coverage by adjusting tower sites or using a tower across the county line. So we expect to have that back to public safety next month with the update and potentially a recommendation of which direction we need to go. Carbon credits, the new visit did happen in May and it went well. I don't have anything specific to share, but we are hearing some positive news on carbon credit values, and the sales are ongoing, and a lot of the third-party audits are coming out positive. So hopefully there's a good future for us in the establishment of carbon credits. Northwest SEP, I think did discuss last week at the committee meetings that, and Mr. Kariainen mentioned that they are having some cash flow issues. They requested $5,000 from the 10 counties that are members of Northwest SEP. Price County did go ahead yesterday at their county board meeting and approve $5,000 loan to SEP. Some of the other counties, we wanted, like the admins, discuss needing more information. The letter that we received outlined that they had a reduction in revenues and an increase in expenses, but that's not very detailed. So we wanted to know what's the reason. Part of it is slow. They're on reimbursement basis with some of their grant funding. That's slow to come in, and they still have payroll and rent expenses. So we are getting their financials. I think sounds like most of the counties are leaning towards providing some financial support. We did ask about what's the plan. They're on a July to June fiscal year, so even if we do this in July, it'll still be a benefit to them to cover their expenses and then pay it back by the beginning of next year with next year's money. So I expect we'll have a more formal request to the Finance Committee next month, and you might see it at next month's board meeting. We're making some improvements in open records requests. The clerk is switching to an online portal through a company, through our website provider that does next request. So we're just trying to streamline the open records request, and with that, streamline the policy. So we have a draft fee schedule that will go to the committee next month to just kind of identify how much the charges for open records requests for, how much the copies are, staff time. So all departments are doing it consistently, and especially with getting the online portal up and running, we need a more straightforward response. One, I think, good thing, we can charge for copies, we can charge to locate a record, we cannot charge for redaction, or having the attorneys review it. There is one exception to that now. The legislature did pass and the governor signed Act 235, I believe. So it's specific to law enforcement. We do get a fair number of requests for audio and video recordings from law enforcement. I was just sitting with the chief deputy and the sheriff during lunch, and they had to go back today to work on more records requests. So now, specific to audio and visual, they can charge or recover the expense for the actual cost of redacting through pixelization or technology of audio and video records, which they spend a lot of time doing, and we do get a lot of requests for those. So at least they'll recover some of their time that way. And I guess the tourist rooming house, I just want to make one mention there of some, that's going back to the ad hoc committee. I think in part we needed just to pull together some better information on why we're even doing this tourist rooming house ordinance discussion. So I've been pulling together some of that data, some frequently asked questions and responses, so the board and the public can understand, as well as compiling all the other tourist rooming house licenses, permits that are out there with other counties. So I have some trivia for you. So, and I think we've thrown this number around, but it's still fairly accurate, that Sawyer County has right now 598 licensed tourist rooming houses. And by license, I mean that's how many are licensed through our Agent of the State program, where we act as the state to issue their Department of Health licenses to accommodation providers, restaurants, that type of thing. So we have 598 of those licensed through the state. We are right in a neck and neck race every month. And right now is renewal time for third place. So Walworth has 600, Brown County has 587. But right now is renewal time, so that may change. Door County has 1,296 and Vilas County has 1,036. Oneida is behind us at 537 and Bayfield at 410. And then it drops off pretty quickly into the 200s and 100s. So we do have a significant number of them. And so we pulled out some more data of that, approximately 598. 229 of them are owned in the county. So that means the invoice and the communications for the state license goes to a county address. 20 of them are just outside the county or within an hour. 145 are still within the state, but further out. And 205 of those are owned by out-of-state owners. So a third are out of state. I think I counted 23 states of ownership. Just a little bit of background on the diversity of ownership there.
Good job. Any questions?
Could you tell me if the Health and Human Services are still working from home, or are they all in-house?
It's a mix. So we have, economic support pre-COVID now still have in-office schedule and out-of-office schedule, because they work on the consortium for the, and they work on the phone. Trying to think of the proper term, but the calls come in, calls go out. They can work for the call center. Thank you. Once that's a hard word. And then we do have some other staff that we have, like in CPS, they have a in-office, out-of-office schedule.
So is the only unusable space that front call center that is over by your office right now? And is there any plans for that?
There are no plans for that. They're using it for a specific purpose of some storage. There's no plans to staff an upper office. All the traffic is routed down to the lower level receptionist. As far as unused space, I think there is one office unused in there. But even the staff that work from home have a in-office, a place or an office in the courthouse. Now, we have talked about if we were pressed for space, those individuals don't need necessarily a dedicated office to them. They like our child support, they work because they don't have much public contact. When they come in, they share, like, somebody might be in the office today, the next day, somebody else is in that office and they're working. The person who was sitting there yesterday is at home. So we do have, if we needed space, we have a ability to consolidate some to create more space. Was that the nature of the question? Was that space? Okay. Okay.
It just is empty.
Oh, okay.
I just have hopefully a brief question, and because I've heard a lot about the Airbnb, the housing, but I'm not on a committee that dives into it. Oddly, I'm on the economic committee, but it never comes up, so I guess it's not, would appear to be an economic issue, but maybe it's not. Those are, when they're renting those places, is that a commercial business? Am I opening up a hornet's nest here?
Yeah, I mean, it's nuanced because they're residential. They're residential properties.
But they're become okay. That's where I just get confused because they seem to be a commercial business, but they don't go through a zoning process. They get a commercial, and they probably would never get that approved if it went to a commercial zoning CUP.
That's one of the things we'll point out or document a little bit better. And we did this all a year or more ago, and I think we need to go back and refresh and re-educate that when we put together all the counties and all the different permits and licenses they have, some do a permit, or excuse me, a license like we're doing. Some do a permit, like they actually do a cup. They take them through zoning, they have to get a conditional use permit, and like I think what you're saying is have an allowable use in a designated or a zone district. We have steered away from that because of the number, and frankly, to make it a little bit more seamless for the tourist rooming house owner, that they'll be able to do our county license along with their state license in the same time seamless process.
Yeah, I know it's a phenomena. It's just I'm not on a committee for it. I'm getting more and more inquiries from people, and it's it seems to be a complicated issue, which I want to be pro-business, but at the same time, it's perplexing, and I'll just leave it at that.
Well, and we probably don't need to go down the whole black hole, but so I know like on a statewide basis, there's discussion on kind of the economic development side of things. Like what effect does the tourist rooming house market have on housing affordability and availability in communities? I think that's what and so through our license process, so we're not touching that. And most places are not touching that because it's, how do you impact the market? I shouldn't say nobody's touching it. There are some talking about it, addressing license fees or,
The state won't let you, right? Isn't it?
The state passed a right to rent law, which property owners have to be allowed the right to rent the residential property.
In this case, it's a commercial business. I know. I want to delay the meeting.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Alvarado. Number 18, correspondence, reports, conferences. Mr. Buck.
I just want to bring up one thing for the Public Safety Committee meeting next month is on July 3rd. That's on a Wednesday, so put that on your schedules and we'll see you then. Thank you.
Thank you. Don't forget about the airport. It's the Sunday after the 4th of July. They have a nice pancake feed out there, and have a very safe 4th of July, everybody. Meeting adjourned.